When should you contact an auctioneer? What should you do before you contact them? We'll talk about those things and more in this week's episode of Behind the Gavel with Jason. My name is Jason Roski. I'm the owner and auctioneer at the KC Auctioning and Appraisal Company here in Kansas City. And I thank you so much for watching this week's episode. I'm just going to try and share this on my page real quick and get that going so that my friends can see that I'm working today. So when should you contact an auctioneer if you're planning on having an auction? And then what should you do before you contact them or expect to be told to do when you do? So the short answer is as soon as you can possibly contact them is when you should. Good morning, Mercedes. How are you doing today? Thanks for watching. And I saw that you got registered for the Have the Auction, so that's pretty exciting. But thanks for watching, and we'll get rolling here. So you should really contact an auctioneer as soon as you realistically know that you have the possibility of an auction in your future. Any and every good auctioneer is usually booked up for quite a while. Right now, we have 3 auctions in-house right now. We talked yesterday on the phone with the lady who has an estate that she is getting ready to sell, but it doesn't need to be done until June of 2020. So we have plenty of time to work on that and schedule it, but you can kind of see what happens in a good auctioneer, a good auction company. Their phones are ringing, their emails are coming in, messages on Facebook are happening all the time. And even an auctioneer who has nothing on his calendar might have 3 or 4 things in the works. So you want to contact auctioneers, especially those you want to work with, that you want to represent your items in your estates. You want to contact them as soon as you realize there's a possibility. Even if you're not ready, you want to put that seed, that kernel of information into the auctioneer's head and let them know that you might be contacting them shortly or in the near future with more concrete details. So outside of as soon as you can, the other thing, how soon you want to contact an auctioneer are the things that you should do before. Let's go to that part of it, because I think when is you contacting them is important, but I think most people realize that you need to contact as soon as possible. If you contact me and you need something done tomorrow, if I can get it done, it's going to cost you a lot more money because my time has value and I have other things I'm scheduled to do. So if you contact an auctioneer 11th hour, expect to have that that request cost you money, basically, is what it's going to end up doing, because you're going to have to shuffle things around and so on. Hey, Ann, how are you doing? And for those watching, went to college with my mom back a few years ago. But thanks for watching, Ann. Appreciate that. So you want to contact the auctioneer as soon as you can so that they know what you have coming up. It also makes your life more easy. So I know for myself, if I have a big project coming up that's not in my normal vernacular, the sooner I can get those wheels turning, the more confident I feel that it's going to be done correctly and well. And the same thing when you're talking about an estate or selling antiques or collectibles or jewelry. The sooner you get those things going in place and you feel comfortable and confident with who you're speaking with, the more relaxed, more confident, and more engaged you will be in a different way. When you're proactive in this conversation, generally speaking, things go better than if you're reactive. Oh my gosh, I got this thing's done tomorrow. What am I going to do? You're really scattered. You're really you don't have the time to be patient, and so contacting an auctioneer sooner rather than later makes all the sense in the world. So what are some of the things that you should do before you talk to an auctioneer, or some of the things that we tell people to do regularly? The first thing is, so we're talking mainly about estates, correct? Because that's what we deal mainly in, is estates and antiques, estate distribution, liquidation, those kinds of things. And so that's where this conversation is going to lead and go. But we're going to suggest to people to make sure that before I come out, or someone in my company or other people like me come out, that you really understand what you're keeping and what you're selling. If you have questions about items, that's different. But if you know for certain that you're keeping a set of sterling flatware, don't even bring it up to us, because that confuses our judgment. We're looking at an entire estate for the first time. And so we don't have the luxury of time in that conversation. And so the more definitive you are and the less things that you have for us to consider, the more definitively we can answer those questions and really have established game plans in a great way. Good morning, Laurel. Thanks for watching. If you all have any questions or comments, please post them here. I'll try and answer those during the conversation. If you're watching this afterwards, please come up, post them here. We'll answer them as we can. These videos stay up for pretty much ever, and so we definitely get notifications when there's questions or comments coming up later on. So the first thing we want to do, one of the first things we will tell you to do after you call us is, have you and your family decided what you're keeping? If there are things, like I said, if you know there are things that you're definitely keeping, don't even really concern the auctioneer with that. If you need an appraisal for those things, that's a different conversation. You can have that, and maybe your auctioneer is an appraiser. We do both here. We do evaluations as well. A lot of auctioneers are in the same situation. We've been in the antique industry. I've been doing it for 25 years, 30 years now. Amy, who works for me, has been doing it for over 20 years. And so we have just an incredible amount of knowledge, just in ourselves. And then we have access to and knowledge of where to go to find information. So we do a lot of appraisal and evaluation work. Most auctioneers are the same. And so if you have an appraisal or evaluation question, that's an appropriate thing to ask. But if you've really decided what you're selling, then you want to make sure that that just makes the conversation much more efficient for both parties going forward. So what are some of the other things we want to talk about? Made some notes here. We talked about that. So the other thing we're going to ask you a lot of times is to have pictures, right? So we get calls from people across the street and across the country. We have X, Y, and Z to sell. The first thing we're going to ask you to do is, do you have some sort of an inventory for it? And do you have pictures of it? Because those two things really, really, really establish what you have and set the table. Having said that, take some pride of ownership in what you're sending pictures of and listing them. If you say, I've got a bunch of old furniture, that's how we respond to it. If you say, I've got a 1940s Duncan Fife dining room set in excellent condition, it doesn't change the value, but we understand that it's important to you. And so that we have just a different reaction to it, as everybody does. So when you're talking to an auctioneer, auction professional, the more information you have about what you're trying to sell or thinking about selling, again, the more efficient those conversations are. The better we can help you if we have a better idea of what you're looking to do and looking to sell. And taking 10 minutes to wipe the dust off of the furniture, it goes a long way. Your furniture looks better in the pictures. And in reality, when you're talking to your auctioneer, you're selling your objects to the auctioneer, because we get dozens of requests pretty much every day of things to sell. And if we have item A and item B, they're the same item, but one is clean or one is polished and one is dirty, we're just going to gravitate to the person who has the clean thing because it just looks better. It feels better. We clean things regularly, which is part of our job. But if we don't have to, we're going to go towards the person who's done some work for us already. Let's see. Mercedes asks, I have a Princess Diana brand new in the box. She's in her royal wedding gown with a true small diamond out here. As Prince Charles' royal wedding suit, all new, still in box, and all porcelain. I would love to have them appraised to maybe sell them. Generally speaking, Mercedes, newer royal wedding pieces like Princess and Princess Diana and Prince Charles pieces, they're not usually terribly valuable. You can do a lot of research on your own to find out what those are worth. If you look at eBay completed sales, you're probably going to find the same, if not similar items to those. And so doing a bit of research, this kind of leads into what we're talking about, knowing what you're selling and if there is a market for it. You can easily do some of that research on your own. That is just, 5 minutes on eBay searches. Princess Diana, put in the Princess Diana, the doll company, and any other differentiating factors, and you can put that in the search, and you're going to find similar or the same example, and you can see what they've sold for, and then then you can easily talk to somebody like myself and say, I have this that we're selling on eBay for $50 or $500 or $5,000. Are you a good option for it? Are you the best place to sell it? If so, what's it going to cost us to do that? And so, we instruct a lot of people, just take some time to research. You have to know where you're looking at sold listings prices realized as opposed to asking. You can ask any price for anything you can want. You can imagine. I can ask $1,000 for this, this pen. Doesn't mean it's worth more than 50 cents, but I can ask it. So the same thing holds true in the antique and collectible market. Somebody can ask $500 for a doll, but you might find 10 of them have sold for $35 and $40. That just means somebody has an inflated sense of value for some reason. So you want to look at the sold listings and determine if your item is the same as what it's selling, and then what is it really actually selling for. And oftentimes in a newer collectible like that, eBay is probably a better option than an auction. You can find out what it's worth and just put it out there with a buy it now and let somebody find it there. That's more of a, people will search for that in more of an eBay situation than in an auction that has a really defined time frame. And so, another, a good question to ask an auctioneer is, what are your feelings on topics like that? Is it best for me to sell on eBay or to have you sell it out for someone else? There are many instances and cases where we recommend to people, you should just offer this on your own, either through Craigslist or eBay or Facebook Marketplace, and say, you can spend a couple of hours and you can realize 2 or 3 times the return, because with those venues, you can find somebody who wants it for themselves. With us, this item might only appeal to a smaller section of our buying base, and so we're probably not your best option. And any auctioneer who is worth their salt will have things that they will tell you like that. No, if we're working with a full estate, that's when we can sell some of those other things that we may not be the best option for, but they're part of the entire package, and so we will sell them and do as good a job as we can. But we will always do a really good job of explaining up front what to explain. The Hadley auction is a perfect example of that. Talking to Dan, who was here in the office yesterday for the open house, before we signed the contract, and we met with Dan several months ago the first time, and he showed me a list of pieces, and they had tried selling them here and there over the last 20 years or so since his mother passed. And his mother sold, marionettes and dolls and puppets while she was alive. And I said, those are reasonable prices. Some things we will sell will bring a lot more than that, and we've borne that out to be true already with 2 days left to go on the auction. And other things won't bring as much, but in this situation, because you have a nice size collection, the auction is going to generate a lot of interest and activity that you just cannot do with a single piece here and there. And so that instance, in that situation, really makes a lot of sense to sell it in an auction setting. Some of the other things you want to do, we talked about, making sure that you and your family want to keep, if there's things there you want to keep. If there are things that you're considering donating or know that you're donating, have those separated as well. If there's things you're sitting on the fence about, ask your auction professional. Say, we kind of thought about donating this to the local historical society because of X, Y, and Z, but we want to get your input on that. And there are instances and situations where specific items are beneficial to historical societies and museums and associations, and other times it will just be a burden to them. And so you want to make sure that you really understand: will they use this? Will they want it? Can they benefit from owning it? Or does it make sense for to go ahead and sell that thing and just give the museum or the society or whatever it is, give them the money. They can always use money to help further their educational programs or their security or whatever they need. Every organization can always use an extra donor's check every year. So that's kind of we've already for almost 15 minutes. It's getting easier and easier for me to talk for 15 minutes without coming up for air. So let me just look at my notes here as soon as possible. Some of the other reasons why you want to contact your auctioneer as soon as possible. Obviously, scheduling is important, but are there special events coming up? Are there holidays coming up that you need to be concerned about or cognizant of? Are there family situations? We sold kind of luckily several years ago, we had sold a collection of beer cans, which sounds silly to some people, but there was actually a lot of value in it. And we knew that there was some value to them because they were older cans from the 40s and 50s, and there were some interesting pieces, right? We were fortunate in that when we scheduled our auction, it was really like a month before the National Beer Can and Breweriana Collectors National Convention. It was a month before that. And so we happened to catch timing right because there was a lot of people there that have a big trade show, an antique show. of people buying and selling and trading this type of merchandise. And several of the dealers who set up there found out about our auction, and they knew that they were going to have an opportunity to sell it in just a few weeks after they bought it. So they went ahead and were very active in that. If we'd had that auction a month after that event, we wouldn't have had nearly as big a success rate because the timing just worked out. And so if you have some time to schedule things out, let's say you live in a small town, do you want to that has an Oktoberfest or an apple orchard, harvest weekend? Does it make sense to coordinate it with that event, do it the same weekend, or not? I have found oftentimes that when there's a big event going on, you don't want to compete with that. Even though it sounds similar, you have a lot of people in town, they're already focused and scheduled on doing other things the weekend before or after. And if you can do it the weekend after and hand out flyers at that event, well, then you could have a gangbuster auction or event because you're able to contact people who may not get the local paper, but they're in town because of it. So you want to be able to schedule and plan based upon the family's needs and desires, the auctioneer's schedule, the neighborhood, and events at large. Does it make sense? Can you work, in conjunction with, capitalize on things going on around your time frame, as well as other topics and situations. So that's a good thing. We talked about understanding your own goals and objections when contacting the auctioneer. What do you want to get accomplished? Are you just looking to clear the house? You've sold the $300,000 house and you just need it empty so you can sold? That's a different conversation than my parents collected for 30 years. And we really want to ensure that there's value received, but we also want to ensure that the people who are going to appreciate it know that it's available and have a chance to bid on it. That's as important many times as the money. Markets change, values change, desirabilities change and things all the time. And so you may not receive the monetary results that you thought it might, or were hoping that it might, but if the people who understand it and appreciate it know about it, then you understand that, the market is just different now. And that happens. People collect, when you talked about establishing a collection over 30, 40, 50 years, the things that the collector bought over that time frame has changed drastically as well. They're looking for different things now than they were when they started. And the markets in general are the same way. It's just, there's no other way to put it. And as taste and society changes, the changing demographic of family size and all those things change. There are a lot of things today that have value that didn't before because of that, and other things that may never have value again because of the changing family dynamic. And so you have to just take that as into consideration and understand that going forward, and understand the reasons why. We can talk about that in depth. And in fact, I think next week's question behind the gavel, Jason, we're going to talk about changing demographics and changing tastes. I don't know exactly how to title that, but we're going to look at historical timeframes as far as family size, household size, and all those things. And what does that mean for the antique and secondary and estate markets? So again, thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to wrap it up in just a minute. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, please post them here. I'll try and answer them really quick before we leave, or we'll get to them as we can in the future. You can always give us a call at 816-283-3633. Send us a direct message here on Facebook, post a comment here, or you can always send us an email as well at info@kcauctioncompany.com. info@ K, C, auction company, spelled out.com. I should use some little signs to hold up when I do that, because we're doing this live. I don't know I can't do the editing during the live, but I should use some little signs right here. I can just hold up little placards. I think probably should do that. But again, thank you all so much for watching. It's a beautiful Friday afternoon here in Kansas City. It's in the 80s. It's getting down to the 60s at night, so we're kind of starting to feel fall weather. For those of you on the East Coast, in the Carolinas, please be careful this weekend. Hopefully there's not much damage to you and yours. And if you had to evacuate, hopefully you've done that already and are in a safe place. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching. We'll have a great weekend. We have 2 great auctions online right now. We have the preview video I shot yesterday for both, the kind of fun stuff in both of those. And we're really excited about how these both turn out, and the auctions coming up soon in the future. So thank you again so much for watching, and we'll have a great weekend. Ooh, what happened there? And